Okay, I've got the camera set up over here, and it's been a week since we put the head on, set the rockers and did all that sort of thing. And we haven't set the main rockers yet, we just pulled this back one, the number 4, we just pulled that down to around 10 thou. Now, the reason we did that is just so we know that when the inlet and exhaust valves on number 4 are rocking and your pointer down the side here is on 0, top dead centre, and your screwdriver is in the timing hole that we spoke about the other day, on a previous video, we have to be firing on number 1, and that's what we're aiming at, setting this up for firing on number 1. Now, we know the crank's in the right place, it can't be anywhere else but in the right place. Where the cam is, we're setting that now, but there's been a week gone by since I've had a chance to come up here and work on this, and what I was doing this morning, I was just putting this sprocket on, the camshaft sprocket, and it's just held on with a couple of bolts there, and what I need to do is, with the new timing sprocket down here, I need to sit it against the shims on the crank here and get the timing chain running true, so both sprockets are exactly in line. So in the process of doing that, I was giving this a bit of a wiggle, and that's okay, but I thought, well, when we hold it one way, the exhaust valve tightens up. When we hold it the other way, the inlet valve tightens up, so we've got that little bit of movement there. Now, in the book it says about opening it up to 20 and putting a 10 thou feeler gauge and all that, but look, I'm thinking about it, there's a better way. Well, this is what I think anyway. So if we back both lock nuts off the rockers, or the tappet adjustment, so we'll back both lock nuts right away. So we'll take the lock nut out a couple of turns. Now, if we take these screws in until they just touch, and that's just gently touch, that movement will go. There we go. So rocking it back and forth as we see, we loosen one of them and we get a bit of movement. We slowly tighten that up. We get to the point where we have no movement. So that's probably where we would want to be. Now you can force that a little bit, but when we're forcing that you can actually see this valve moving. So if we loosen him back off, and I suppose what we're looking at is with a 10 thou gap like they suggest, with an even gap. Whoops, I just dropped my spanner again. So with an even gap at that back rocker, and if we mark a tooth here, and this tooth here is in line with this slot here, and then we come, see there's about half a tooth movement, so if we bring this back to a quarter of a tooth, so we know we're about halfway between the measurements of our 10 thou, and just hold that down there once we found our 10 thou. And we found our 10 thou so we know we're in an even spot. And then we just screw that down momentarily. That has to be the right position. You can still force it a little bit, but that has to help, I believe. So what I might do is, in that position, I'll just nip this rocker adjusting nut, or lock nut up on both, just so they don't move without me knowing. Not tight, just firm enough to stop the bolt moving. Yeah, that back one moved a little bit on me. It's a little bit fiddly, isn't it? She's there, that's the place we want it to be. Okay, I'll just leave that alone. Save buggering around with it. All right, we'll come back. Our original timing sprocket on the crankshaft. Now if we come around and try and zoom in there a little bit for you. There we go. Now you'll see on the original crankshaft lower sprocket, there was a one brass shim there. And when we have a look at the other side of the sprocket, if I come around this other side, these here were the shims between the crank gear, the crank sprocket, and the pulley. So with the two sprockets, this is our old sprocket. Now this is our new sprocket, and I'm on my second new sprocket. I've got to tell you a little story. The first sprocket I got, which I put the timing marks on, was slightly small on the internal diameter. So it's here. You can see where I put the timing mark. And so I'll zoom out a little bit, I think, just I'm hopping out of frame. So this first sprocket, it's a Sprocket sprocket, and it was around 1.5 thou too tight in here. So I did some testing and some measuring and buggering around, and I spoke to Sprockets and they said, oh, okay, thanks for the feedback. And they sent me another one. They said, well, we got another one here now. Would you like to check that out for us? And look, this one's fine. No problems with that at all. But what we do need to do is sit this sprocket against, just roughly, to save bumping it on and off the crankshaft all the time. If we sit it down there, we can see that it's not quite, it's a little bit hard to do, but it's not quite in line here. So what we'll have to do is pop the key out of the crank, and we'll just space the crankshaft up until this sprocket lines up with the cam. So I'll do that, I'll get closer to where we need to be, and then I'll come back. Okay, well look, what I've done here is I've got a piece of flat steel, and I've run it down as a straight edge along the side of my pulleys of my sprockets. Now, I've just taken a bit of a guess at the moment of what we need here, how many shims we need. So I've got, instead of the one shim that was there originally, I've got 6 shims in behind there now. Now we'll just lube the shaft a little bit more just to make sure. And I've got an inch and a half 3/4 drive socket. Now the inch and a half 3/4 drive, you'll notice I've got a socket that sits around the edge, not in the centre. I don't want to distort or damage that centre at all. So what we need to do here is just try and hold that true. And we're not bottomed out on that socket yet. So we know we're going to have to pull the sprocket off again, but what we're looking for is we're looking for a straight line. So when this straight edge, and what we're looking at is run the straight edge, getting it level on the biggest sprocket first, and then running it down onto the smallest one. Now, we can go on this flat surface here, and we can also go on the flat surface next to that flange there, which is this surface here on the side of the tooth. That will be good enough for us. So be careful if you come across the bolts here, you'll get a dicky reading, but when you run across there, I've actually got I reckon I've got one shim too many. I can just see a little bit of air through there. Now, if I lean through into the shot and bugger it all up for you, and we run through like there, you'll see I can just fit a, you can just feel that touching. Oh, it's pretty close though. Let's drop back to a smaller size. 8's the smallest on this because it's a set of tappet or rocker gauges, but and make sure we're seated home properly. Oh look, I can't even get the 8 in there. Okay, look, that's pretty good. That's probably close enough. Now let's have a measure of these shims. I haven't done that as yet. We'll get one shim. We'll just do a vernier measurement here. 5 there. Yeah, the 10 doesn't quite line up, so it's not that, but the 5 lines up perfectly. So these are 5 thou shims. So it's probably worth taking one of those out. So what I'll do, I'll pull this sprocket back off. See if I can get my little mate in here. Oh, I need to wind all my threads back a bit. I'll pan out a little bit for you, I think. You can see the mess I got, but that's all right. If you can fix a tractor up and not have a bit of a mess on the floor, you're a better person than I am. I've got to have a mess. I'm not happy. Okay, so we bring that in nice and tight. I've got a nice big surface area on this puller. This won't be hard to pull. Try and pull that in tight. So we're going to take one 5 thou shim out and see what we have from there. Can't quite turn that by hand. See if we can catch all of this. Beautiful. Okay, one shim stuck to the sprocket. Oh, then I dropped it after being so bloody careful. Hang on a sec, we've got to have a clean up. So what we should be able to do here is we'll just measure this shim here. Yep, that one's 5 there. So we'll take that off and we'll clean up the crank again, make sure there's no swarth, junk, rubbish, anything at all there. We'll sit that on top of the chip cooker. And we'll put the key back in. Okay, I'll go and tidy the key up. You can't help but damage them just a slight bit when you're getting them out. So I'll tidy the key up and I'll pop the sprocket on and we'll come back and just check that it's true.